Hey, how's everybody doing today? This is the bearded Christian hillbilly, otherwise known as Scott Langrel. I'm going to follow up on the promise I made to make a little fun video here, I guess. Maybe not as serious as some of the other ones I've made. About the elemental spirits mentioned in the Bible, and how that maybe ties into a lot of the Appalachian folklore and folklore around the world. Now, elemental spirits, that term is only used by Paul in his epistles, maybe 3 or 4 times at most. The main one being in Colossians chapter 2 verse 8, it says, "See to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of this world, and not according to Christ." Now, there's a lot of debate on what Paul meant by elemental spirits, and it basically falls into 2 main camps. The first camp says that Paul is merely talking about worldly ways and traditions. In other words, you're saved, you know Jesus now, it's time to put away these worldly ways and traditions. Don't go by those anymore. The second camp, which includes some of the Bible scholars and theologians that I respect, maintain that Paul was actually talking, when he used the term spirits, he was actually talking about spirits. Now, there is a line of thought among some theologians or theologians that these elemental spirits in the beginning, really before the fall and everything went really, really bad, these were just kind of low level Elohim, which, as we've discussed before, Elohim simply refers to a being whose natural state, where they usually live, is in the spiritual realm. But they can manifest and make themselves known in the natural, the human realm, earthly realm. And that, like the term angel itself is used to denote messenger, that a lot of these beings, they had specific tasks. And some of these beings were tasked with being kind of like principalities on a lower level. When we think about a principality, and the principalities I wrote about in my book, in my newest book, Pastor, these are principalities of like nations, very large geographical areas. But there is a school of thought that many of these lower, kind of low on the totem pole, Elohim were tasked with watching over smaller geographical areas. If you're hearing a humming in the background, I finally got tired of burning up over here, so I put me a little window unit air conditioner up there, so now my face is not melting off. It's actually kind of cool in here. Hopefully that doesn't distract you. But yeah, let's say like you know, a certain forest or a body of water or a mountain. And of course, in the beginning, these beings were obedient to God, and their main purpose was just to maintain order and make sure everything was going well in their little specific area that they were accountable for. Now, when Satan fell and kind of took over the earth, you know, that was his sphere of influence. Many or most of these low-level elemental spirits kind of fell under him. So they basically, some switched sides, you know. Some became malevolent instead of benevolent. So there is, and maybe it's kind of a stretch, I'll admit that. But there is some biblical basis to connecting things in not just Appalachian folklore, but folklore worldwide to these specific beings. In fact, check the good old notes here. I had to make a few notes for this one. It says hundreds of distinct cultures worldwide share a belief of little people or nature spirits. Now we're talking about pretty much every continent on Earth. The cultures shared, not necessarily in the same types of being. They called them different things. They described them in different ways, but they were basically the same thing. They were like, think of the Native Americans, you know, with the nature spirit, the spirits that would correspond to something in nature. Now you've got two pretty big names that kind of come down on the side of the same side of this. Not exactly, but pretty much so. The first one's the man I always talk about, Dr. Michael Heiser. In his book Unseen Realm, he comes down on the side that these were actually entities, actual spiritual entities. Though his view was more like they more represented the sun, the moon, the stars, you know, objects you would see in the heavens that primitive or ancient people would look at, you know, and tend to worship, even though they are actual entities. They're not just, you know, somebody's imagination. There's another feller called Gary Wayne who you may or may not be familiar with. Now Gary Wayne, I don't think he claims to be a biblical scholar or any kind of educated theologian about, but he is a pretty famous writer, and he does write about a lot of biblical stuff. His I think his main work, his main book, or one of his newest books, is called the Genesis 6 Conspiracy, which of course Genesis 6 refers to the Watchers and the Nephilim. And he also comes down on the side of these elemental spirits as being actual spiritual entities. And he says, back to those notes again, He considers them to be non-human entities that masquerade as gods, demigods, or nature spirits. So they're not technically nature spirits. They were actually what one might call, I guess, really low-level angels that were security guards, I guess, for lack of a better term, over certain geographical areas. And that was their task. So it's not like, I mean, they were created by God just like every other being, everything else was created by God. But as time went on, a lot of them kind of fell to the wayside. They kind of took Satan's point of view, like, what's so special about these human beings, these people, And they kind of turned bad, and they started turning mischievous, malevolent. So let's tie that into some Appalachian folklore. First one I wanted to talk about, which apparently what we Appalachians call a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch, a wood booger. Now I'm here to tell you, I've lived in Appalachia, in the heart of Appalachia, all my life. And as a youngster, I was always intrigued by stories about Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, stuff like that. I had never heard the term wood booger until a video came out several years ago that was filmed somewhere in the area. I can't remember, maybe Russell County, Dixon County, somewhere up in Southwest Virginia, which supposedly showed a Bigfoot-like creature. And this kind of went viral. And all of a sudden, you've got all these local businesses and everybody around in the area saying, "Oh yeah, that's the wood booger. We've known about a wood booger for years." I never heard about a wood booger. I mean, I guess that there were maybe people that had called something like that a wood booger. I never heard it. And now you've got, like, you've even got a restaurant up in Norton, Virginia called the Wood Booger. Really good food. If you're ever in Norton, Virginia, unless they've changed, I haven't been up that way in a couple of years to eat there, but really good food. But and they sell t-shirts and stuff, and now places are starting to have like little wood burger festivals and stuff like that. I kind of call that one out a little bit because, I'm 62. I've told you that in almost every video. I had never heard the term before all this started several years ago. No idea that anything like a Sasquatch even existed anywhere around in Southwest Virginia or East Tennessee. But we've got that, which is basically a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch. And could this be one of these spiritual elementals or elemental spirits? Is that why we can't find a body? Why we've never found a body of one? Now we know that angels can manifest as humans. We talked about that, I think, last video. Demons, what would be considered a regular demon? They're disembodied spirits. I've never seen really any. They can make you see things, but they can't really materialize. They're more worried about possessing a body, preferably a human body. So I think we can rule out what we would call an actual demon. But since all we know about these elemental spirits is from a couple of references from Paul, we can't be exactly sure of what they can do, what they can't do. Can they manifest physically in this world? Or can they make us see what they want us to see? Of course, you've got plenty of evidence, circumstantial evidence, but evidence. There's been thousands and thousands of sightings in the U.S. alone. And it's apparently not just like a mirage or a hologram that you're looking at, because people say they can smell them, they can hear them. You got footprints that people have taken. You got them on film, usually not very good quality, but you got them on film. But if a Sasquatch were some type of elemental spirit, which could either manifest in our reality or go back to their natural habitat, which would be the spiritual realm, then that would explain away why we really don't have proof, why we can't find any dead bodies. Another one that's quite famous from Point Pleasant, West Virginia, was the Mothman. It was back in, looks like 1966, 61 to 63 or 60. I wrote down 1960. Okay, 66 to 67. I can't read my own writing. Should have been a doctor. I can't read. Nobody can read my writing, including myself. That's a really heavy publicized case. There's been several documentaries and I think a couple of movies made about it. What this thing was, and the fact that it seemed to show up before some kind of disaster took place, almost as if it were a harbinger, or trying to tell us that something bad was going to happen, which wouldn't make it necessarily evil, but yeah. We've got the Flatwoods Monster. This one looks like Braden, West Virginia. It's said to have like a spade-shaped head, and the body is almost like a woman's dress. It glows. They've had several encounters there. Back in the 50s, starting back in the 50s, of seeing that specific being. One that is kind of more directly tied to originating, I think, in Appalachia, or at least becoming popular in Appalachia, is one that's only been around for a few years. The term, it's only been a few years ago that I've heard this, and they're called not deer. What is that? Well, it's not deer. I don't know. It looks like a deer, but it's not deer. These creatures typically tend to appear as a deer, but on close examination, you'll find find imperfections or discrepancies, that they're not actually an actual deer. Their joints and their legs will move wrong, or even some cases of them walking around on their hind legs. So could that be another? almost ties into the shapeshifter, which is a Native American folklore and tradition. Kind of close to that. Could that be something? Could that be an elemental spirit? And then we got one of my favorites, the Wampus Cat. If you've never heard of the Wampus Cat, look it up. Actually, the last band I played in before I retired from music, we were called the Wampus Cats. I think we finally shortened it to Wampus towards the end. But a Wampus Cat is a large feline that can walk around on its hind legs, and generally described as having glowing red or yellow eyes. In some versions, it's a cat that has 6 legs that walks around, a big cat. But the Wampus Cat is one that I have been familiar with for a long time, since I was younger. In Adams County, Tennessee, there was a movie made about this also, and several documentaries, The Bell Witch, which was said to be, even though they used the term witch, the way the account was described would probably be something more along some kind of demonic-like presence, which could shapeshift, mimic other people's voices, stuff like that, while not actually being a demon in the traditional sense of the word, as we understand it within the Divine Council worldview. It would definitely be something malevolent, something bad. And that, like I say, that case was heavily documented. The Cherokee were prevalent around in this area back in the early days. They had something called a raven mocker, which again is something that falls kind of into the shapeshifter category. The raven mocker was usually a medicine man that went bad and would turn into a shrieking raven, fly around at night looking for elderly or sick people to kind of siphon off their lifespan and cause them to pass away quicker. The Cherokee also have a tradition of these things they called the moon-eyed people, and these were little people with beards and pale skin, which would kind of put you in the mind of something like a dwarf or a gnome, something that would live underground, having the pale skin and the beards and stuff like that. But they had these big glowing eyes, thus the term the moon-eyed. These were said to kind of been woodland spirits or guardians of certain places. So, yeah, I mean, like I say, a lot of people might call it a stretch, but I think it's kind of fun to look at. It kind of ties into a lot of my earlier books, the Finn McCoy books, because throughout those, the Fae, which is fairies, fairy kind, they play a pretty prominent role. In the first few books, they're strictly evil beings. In the later books, you find out that there's actually 2 categories. You've got the evil fairies, and then you've got the good fairies, or at least neutral. They're not out to hurt people, where the evil ones are. They're tricksters, you know. They try to lure people out into the woods. But yeah, I mean, is it possible that these beings are responsible for a lot of the sightings that we see in the Appalachian Mountains and other places around the world today? I mean, the Bible's not really clear on it. It gives us a few hints, and we can draw our own conclusions. But just like the principalities, the major principalities, though Jesus took their power, most of their power away from them when he ascended to heaven, they're not destroyed. They're not destroyed yet. Psalm 82 makes a specific reference to that when God is talking and chastising the principalities, which were parts of his divine council, which were supposed to be ruling these other nations, he says, I've told you that you're gods and sons of the Most High. Nevertheless, like any mortal man shall you die and fall like any prince. So they're not gone yet. It's not the appointed time yet. Their time is when Jesus comes back. So even though they're working under a diminished capacity, they still have some influence. And it following that logic, if you had these lesser spiritual beings that were tasked with guarding, you know, certain geographical areas across the earth, whether it be a lake or a certain forest, or like I said, a mountain, just any type of place, there's no reason to think that they're not still here too. And if they are, can they be responsible for some of these sightings that we're seeing? Kind of in the same way that they're having the big debate about, you know, right now about the UFOs or the UAPs or whatever. I'm not going to go into that here for two reasons. Number one, any kind of channel, Christian channel right now that talks about anything supernatural at all, that's all they're talking about. So if you want to find out about that, go check them out. Number two, I just really don't have, I guess I've got an opinion, but not a strong enough opinion to share. I've never seen a UFO. That is to say, I might have seen something flying around the sky that I had to take a second look at. That doesn't look like a plane. That doesn't look like a helicopter. So in that sense, yes, it was unidentified to me because I wasn't close enough to see what it was. But as far as actually seeing any kind of craft, alien, walking around, anything like that, I've never experienced it. I've never experienced seeing a Bigfoot. As far as I know, I've never really experienced any kind of cryptid at all. Now I can tell you, being born a ridge runner and spending a lot of my youth in the mountains, sometimes after dark, that I have come across certain places where one minute you're just walking around feeling normal, and you take one step and then all of a sudden you get a bad feeling, It's like the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It's you really feel almost like you're in danger, that you really need to watch your step. And I have experienced that a couple of times, being out in the woods, especially at night. Not always at night, but especially at night. I have experienced that. And could that have been because there was a predator nearby that I didn't know about, but my body was somehow sensing that, and that's what I was feeling? Well, it's possible. I don't know. I do know I have experienced it. But anyway, that's I think that's about all I'm gonna do. We're a little past 30-minute mark here. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is this just way too much of a stretch for you to think that these folklore type creatures, Bigfoot, little people, trolls, stuff like that, are they all just complete made up mythology, or could they have a basis in actual spiritual beings which are mentioned in the Bible? Let me know what you think. If you want to give it a like, give it a like. If you want to follow me, follow me. I got 2 followers since last time. I'm flying high again. One more thing before I leave, let you go. Still working on the 2nd book of the Pastor series. And I think this one's going to be, I mentioned this on my Facebook author page, which you're free to feel free to visit. It's just author Scott Langrel on Facebook, and follow me there. I think the 2nd book's going to be shorter than the 1st book, for 2 reasons. Number one, I had to spend a lot of time, a lot of space in the 1st book explaining the Divine Council worldview, which, you know, is kind of like the operating system for my whole novel, that I don't feel like I need to rehash in the 2nd book. Now, of course, I'm sure I'll go back over a couple of things, but I don't feel the need to go back and rehash every little detail about how the Divine Council worldview works like I did in the 1st book. And secondly, most of my Finn McCoy books ran anywhere from 150 to 175, maybe somewhere close to 200 pages sometimes. Pastor here runs over 330 pages. And it kind of took me out of my comfort zone a little bit. Now, the only other book that I've got a actual physical copy of here is was going to be part of a series, but I decided not to go on with it. This is not really a supernatural book. It's more of a vigilante book called The Shearing Season, and it's around 175 pages. Now you can tell the difference, you know. These are the same size book, but look at the thickness there. I'm really considering going with, you know, something maybe closer in this length from the book I'm working on now and any subsequent Pastor novels. Just for the fact that that's where I'm in my comfort zone. is usually somewhere between 50 and 60,000 words, whereas Pastor was probably about 84,000 words. And I don't want to waste waste the reader's time and my time by putting in a bunch of filling just to pad the book and make it longer. That's not the way I like to write. So let me know what you think about that too. Would you be okay with a book that's more along the lines of maybe about 175 to 200 pages, as opposed to a 300 plus page book? I think I could actually do a better job in the shorter form, to tell you the truth. And I only plan on pricing them the same as the first one. I mean, the first one, Pastor, right now you can get the ebook for 99 cents. For that, 99 cents. And any subsequent book, I'll probably also price at 99 cents, because that's as low as you can go. So would a 200 page book work for you at 99 cents? Would you be interested in that? Let me know about that too. But anyway, I'm gonna wind it down. Hopefully you had a little fun with this one, made you think a little bit. Think about the childhood stories you've heard, or even as an adult, about all the weird stuff in Appalachia, and then go back and tie it in with what Paul said, and see what you come up with. See if that's something that you can put some stock in, or something that you're going to just totally throw out. Anyway, y'all have a good day. God bless each and every one of you. We'll talk to you next time.